A quick like and subscribe really helps our channel grow and allows us to bring you even more amazing content. Thank you for your support. It was supposed to be just another holiday gathering, filled with laughter, festive decorations, and a bit too much eggnog, yet it transformed into one of the most pivotal moments of my life. My close-knit group of friends had established a tradition of a white elephant gift exchange, where the goal was to bring something humorous or quirky to swap around the circle. This year, I felt inspired. After days of thinking, I decided to gift a vintage-looking box, aged like an artifact, wrapped in gold foil that glimmered under the twinkling Christmas lights. Little did any of us know, it was more than just an old box. To everyone's amusement, when my best friend Alex unwrapped it, inside was a scratch-off lottery ticket I had thrown in on a whim, just to keep things lighthearted. Laughter erupted when he scratched it off only to find out that it was worth over $1 million. At that moment, it felt like I was in a fairy tale. Yet, as the initial shock began to fade, a heavy feeling settled in my stomach, as excitement morphed into uncertainty. For days, we celebrated, a party filled with playful banter, immense joy, and, surprisingly, stakes that transformed the bonds of friendship into something frayed and fragile. The conversation soon shifted from congratulatory remarks to some friends expressing that, because the winning ticket had originated from my white elephant gift, I had an obligation to share the wealth. After all, the ticket had not just sprung forth from thin air, it was part of a game played between us. I remember sitting at home in my small, cozy apartment that night, staring at the blinking light of my phone as the group chat erupted with opinions, judgments, and a sense of entitlement that rattled me to my core. I began to feel torn. On one hand, I wanted to help my friends, especially since they had been my support group through thick and thin, but on the other, it was a significant amount of money that I had never expected to see, and it felt deeply personal to me. As I continued to navigate the whirlwind of discussions, some of my friends took it a step further, outright demanding their share of my newfound fortune. They argued that I shouldn't have even included the ticket as part of the gift, highlighting how, as the giver, I had unintentionally created this awkward position. My doubts began to grow into whispers in my mind, trying to convince me that I was the one who was being selfish and greedy. Such thoughts gnawed at me, leading to sleepless nights, but I also cherished the idea that perhaps this money could help me rebuild my life. I had been stuck in a rut, toiling away in a mediocre job that barely paid enough to cover rent and bills, and now I could not only pay off my debts, but I could also travel, invest in furthering my career, and maybe even start on that overly ambitious dream of mine, opening a small bookstore cafe by the coast where stories would seep through the walls like sweet laughter. But the rift grew. The gifts from Christmas became burdens that I contemplated every waking moment. To distance myself from the conversations that blurred the lines of friendship, I withdrew from the group chat for a time, taking each day to regroup. I took long walks in the nearby park, letting the cool air fill my lungs while my mind wrestled with the notion of entitlement. I even visited an old bookstore to distract myself, where I could lose hours wandering between the bookshelves that smelled of musty paper and adventure. Eventually, after a week of wrestling with my thoughts, I decided to face my friends. I arranged a casual dinner, a final gathering to resolve our unspoken tension. As the evening unfolded, I chose to be honest. I sat them down, carefully explaining how the ticket had landed in a box meant solely for fun, devoid of the weight of expectations and obligations. I wanted to stress that while they were my dear friends, the money felt deeply personal to me, a newfound hope for my future. I could see their disappointment, and truthfully, it pierced me. The laughter that had once echoed around us now felt muted. However, I also saw glimmers of understanding in their eyes, and that conversation provided the resolution we so desperately needed. It wasn't about who deserved what, but about maintaining the bonds we had nurtured over the years. As the night wound down, one friend, Clara, who had always been the voice of reason, gave me a reflective look. She smiled softly and stated, "You know, sometimes life throws us surprises, not to be shared or divided, but to change our paths." It struck me deeply. That moment became a tapestry of emotions, a blend of relief, sadness, and resolve. I chose to embrace the good that the lottery had brought into my life while also holding steadfast to the relationships that mattered. In the weeks that followed, I found my footing. I still communicated with my friends, but now it was with less pressure, and whatever division had sprung eased with understanding and communication. Instead of sharing a part of my winnings, I offered to treat them to a weekend trip to celebrate our friendship without the strings of money. And in many ways, the act of spending time together felt even more fulfilling than any monetary exchange. In the end, It was not just about the lottery ticket but about navigating the complexities of relationships and choosing to value friendship over obligation. Ultimately, the lottery had not stripped me of friends but led me to reassess what truly mattered, the authenticity of connections that would thrive regardless of wealth. Update: a few months later, I took another little leap. I followed my heart and opened that bookstore cafe. It was cozy and beautifully chaotic, filled with shelves of stories inviting all who came in. I was pleasantly surprised when some friends offered to contribute their time and skills to help me shoulder the load. Clara even stepped up and helped design the space, jarred mugs with coded messages printed on the sides for the secret menu. There's joy in seeing the delight on people's faces as they step into a world of books and coffee, and on Saturdays, when the place is bustling, I've realized that my path hasn't just changed, it's blossomed into something altogether beautiful. But just as everything was coming together, a shadow loomed over my little haven of caffeine and literature. It was a few months after our grand opening when I received an unexpected call from my brother, Mark, who, after a string of misfortunes, had moved back in with our parents. "You won't believe it," he said, his voice brimming with excitement. "I bought a lottery ticket, and I actually won $50,000. I could hear the triumph behind his words, and part of me felt uplifted by his good fortune, but another part of me squirmed at the implications. After all, during that white elephant gift exchange a few weeks prior, we had used the ticket as just that, a joke among friends, something to pass around for laughs, like the ugly sweater no one wanted. The ticket had cost a mere $10, but now it had transformed into an unexpected fortune. The problem lingered in the back of my mind like an itch: should I pay my brother back for that ticket? My first instinct was to smile and celebrate his success, acknowledging his hard luck turning into a windfall. However, as I watched the cafe thrive, my initial goodwill began to warp under the weight of guilt. I hadn't contributed anything to that silly ticket, nor had I envisioned sharing the wealth or what it might mean for my brother to suddenly have significant amounts of money. It shouldn't be a burdensome obligation, should it? The constant flirtation with self-doubt made my heart race. As I ruminated, I also felt a growing resentment rise against Mark. He was back with my parents, lacking direction, while I had pulled myself together to create something fulfilling. Every week, he kept bringing up potential ideas for what he could do with the winnings. A vacation. Then a new car. In those moments, I found myself resenting that $10 ticket more and more. Weeks passed, and I noticed more requests from Mark. While the cafe had become a green and nurturing space for creativity, Mark's intentions weighed heavy on me. "Why don't you just loan me a little bit to get started?" he'd suggest, each word slithering into my brain like smoke. "You can always recoup it after I get my business going." One afternoon, as I stirred the rich, dark coffee, my stomach twisted with anxiety. Clara noticed and stopped by with a gentle touch to my arm. "What's bothering you?" she asked, and I hesitated before spilling my thoughts like beans into a grinding machine. She listened quietly, concern knitting her brow. "You're not obligated to share anything," she said finally, taking a sip of her espresso, "but you shouldn't feel guilty if you want to help." But there was more to it. It was the emotional knot I had with Mark, our childhood, entwined in responsibility and rivalry. I resented the fact that he had the ability to get something for nothing while I had to build everything from my courage and sweat. One Thursday afternoon, I finally decided to confront him. "Listen, Mark," I started, holding the phone to my ear, feeling the warmth of the cafe's summer breeze danced around me. "I know you're excited about your winnings, and I'm happy for you, but you need to understand. I can't help with your plans. That ticket was never mine to claim or share." His silence felt heavy, a moment too long before he spoke. "Wow, so that's it?" The chill in his tone froze me in place. It felt dreadful but necessary to stand firm, to balance the weight of harsh truth with the buoyancy of love. "But it's my ticket," he continued defiantly. "You were there when I bought it. It's not just luck, I could have picked another ticket, you know? Be better. Be supportive." With every word he poured out, my resolve thinned. "I'm trying to be supportive, Mark, but you can't expect me, of all people, to just distribute money when I'm still figuring out my own life." Somehow, I managed to hang up without feeling like a complete jerk, and as I processed the conversation, I finally felt a flicker of relief. Time passed, and the confrontation became a raw, necessary wound that slowly healed. Through the simmering tension with my brother, I found clarity about my own dreams. The cafe continued to thrive, filled with laughter, warmth, and the soft scent of beans roasting in the back. Clara became my confidant, and together we hosted small writing workshops, each word crafted under the light of connection. Despite the distance with Mark, I began to accept that his choices were his own, separate from my journey, as I found empowerment in the depths of the rooted relationships I built day by day. Months later, I received a text from Mark, one that was devoid of the old bitterness. "Hey, I went on a little trip. It was great. Hope the cafe's doing well," he wrote. A simple note that felt woven with maturity and intent. I responded, letting him know how much the cafe had grown. I didn't owe him anything, and while our relationship became more distant over time, I couldn't help but feel a thread of hope weaving back through our connection, fragile yet promising, just like the very venture I cherished. As I stood behind the counter one morning, with sunlight spilling golden rays through the window, I realized that sometimes, making choices for your happiness meant letting go of guilt, a lesson I hoarded quietly as I breathed in the intoxicating aroma of roasted beans and fresh stories yet to be told. The cafe continued to flourish, much to my delight. I leaned into the rhythm of each day, where the sound of the door chiming would greet me with the promise of new connections. One particularly crisp morning, I found myself overwhelmed with gratitude as I greeted regulars and newcomers. Alike, their smiles infectious, the aroma of brewing coffee wrapping around us like a soft blanket. Clara had this way of lighting up the room whenever she walked in. She carried an energy that was both calming and invigorating. That day, however, felt different. A magnetic energy buzzed beneath the ordinary hustle and bustle. I was preparing for a community event, one that Clara had suggested to foster deeper ties with our patrons. We decided to host a monthly open mic night, where writers, musicians, and poets could showcase their talents, a showcase of voices competing only with the sound of clattering mugs and warm laughter. It was during our final preparations, stringing fairy lights above the circular tables and piling chairs in cozy arrangements, that I noticed Jason standing outside the cafe, hands shoved deep in his pockets with that same familiar expression etched across his features, a mix of longing and hesitation. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. No matter how far our lives had drifted apart, the sight of him brought back a whirlwind of memories and a rush of old emotions. For a moment, I debated whether to invite him inside, but the fog of uncertainty clouded my decision. As the evening wore on and the cafe came alive, untouched notes filled the air, voices weaving tales both heartwarming and haunting. Clara's infectious laughter faded in and out as I caught glimpses of familiar faces sharing moments, and then, almost as if time had folded, Jason stepped through the door. The room hushed momentarily, strangers turned into an audience, and I felt my pulse quicken. He looked around, his eyes searching, and landed on me with a gaze so earnest that it melted the seconds into something palpable. I couldn't help but manage a weak smile, my heart oscillating between pleasure and panic. After the first act concluded, he approached me, and I could feel the vibrations of my surroundings dim, the clinking glasses and buzzing chatter fading into the backdrop of our shared history. "I came to see you," he confessed, his voice the same as I remembered but laced with a timbre of vulnerability I hadn't noticed before. I blinked, struggling for words. Here we stood, transformed by time, yet the undercurrents of unspoken sentiments lingered in the air like a fine mist. I asked him how he had found me, and the conversation spilled out like secrets carefully hoarded, revealing pieces of our lives since we last made contact. He told me about his trials, struggles with his decisions, and how he'd realized the importance of relationships that once mattered to him. Encouraging him to join the open mic crowd, I found myself eased by the moment. The fear I had pinpointed as regret fell softly as he stepped up to perform, seemingly transformed by the acceptance that enveloped him. As he shared his heartfelt song, the audience felt like a gentle embrace, and I couldn't help but lose myself in the harmony that wove through the room. There was beauty in the shared experience. It reminded me that reconciliation doesn't always seek perfection, but requires vulnerability and openness to growth. Our paths, so differently aligned, had somehow allowed us to converge again, revealing that understanding could form new threads, stitching old pains with the fabric of compassion. By the time the last act settled and the cafe's light began to dim, Jason and I found ourselves enveloped in a tranquil embrace of understanding. As I locked up and waved goodbye to the last lingering customers, who unfurled their stories into the night, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. Perhaps, I mused, mistakes didn't have to be anchors but rather lessons gently guiding us toward growth and renewal. With the sweet taste of coffee lingering in my mouth and the warmth of rekindled connection bubbling in my chest, I closed the door behind me, knowing that life would never cease to surprise me with its exquisite range of possibilities. I fell into a contemplative silence as I reflected on the day's unfolding, grateful not just for the cafe, but for the chance encounters and unpredictable paths that lead us back to where we truly belong, whether with friends old or new, wrapped in the comfort of second chances. It all started on a rainy Thursday when I found myself staring at my phone, contemplating whether I should answer the call from Jamie. Jamie and I had been best friends since childhood, our lives woven together like the strands of an old tapestry. He was the kind of person who wore his heart on his sleeve, and while I admired him for that, it often led to the kind of emotional labors that I sometimes felt ill-prepared to navigate. The thing is, I owed him $60 from a bet we placed 3 months prior. At the time, it felt like a good idea. He had bet I wouldn't see a specific movie in theaters, a kind of absurd challenge we often entertained to pass the time. I had pulled through and watched it, laughing at how easily I'd won. But life had a funny way of making one's priorities feel scattered, and with each passing month, that small debt lingered in the back of my mind, like a familiar yet annoying itch I couldn't quite reach. As I sat on my couch, the rain beating against the window, I felt an odd sense of dread. Jamie had been talking about his financial struggles lately, how his part-time job didn't cover his rent or his bills, and I could feel the weight of that call pressing against my chest. I hesitated for a moment, finally picking up the phone, but the conversation wasn't what I anticipated. Instead of the usual banter, Jamie launched into a heartfelt rant about how he felt completely overwhelmed by the world. It was like listening to a dam break, all his frustrations flowing out as he told me about the suffocating weight of his responsibilities. As he spoke, I felt my stomach twist into knots. How could I ask him to let go of this trivial debt when he was clearly in pain? "Look, Jamie, I just need to say something," I interrupted hesitantly. "I know I owe you that $60, but with everything going on, can we just let it slide for now?" I could hear the silence on the other end, how the weight of my words sank into the atmosphere, and I could almost picture his brow furrowing in contemplation. Finally, he spoke, and there was a tremor in his voice. "You know, I really need that money, though." My heart sank deeper. I wanted to help him, but the truth was, my own finances weren't exactly stable. It felt selfish to hold on to my money, but asking him for patience felt equally wrong. Days turned into weeks, and our conversation echoed in my mind like a haunting melody. I could see Jamie's disappointment flash across my memory, see the disbelief etched into his features, and the burden of guilt settled firmly on my shoulders. I tried to reach out, perhaps offering to treat him to coffee or something small to remind him that I cared, but our meetings became fewer as he threw himself into extra shifts. Just as I was spiraling into my own feelings of guilt, Jamie reached out once more, but this time, there was an edge to his voice that set me on alert. He wanted to meet up, and with that, I felt a sense of impending doom settle over me. Did he want to discuss the money again, or was there something else brewing beneath the surface? The anxiety was palpable inside me, it was almost a physical thing, weighing heavy on my chest as I approached the cafe we frequented. When I arrived, he was already seated at our usual table, fidgeting with his phone, looking tangled up in thought. I slid into the seat and gave him a small smile, which he returned with a nod that seemed devoid of any real warmth. "I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation," he began, his voice steady but lacking its usual enthusiasm. "That money. It's not just about the money for me. It feels like a lack of respect, like you don't value our friendship." The words hit me like a slap, and I felt my chest constrict with shame. I started to defend myself, but I could hear the raw hurt in his voice, and my mind raced to find the right words that wouldn't sound like empty excuses. "I thought maybe since things were hard for you, we could let it slide." His gaze was piercing, and I could almost see the crumbling pieces of our history floating between us. The conversations we used to have, the laughter we shared, now felt grim and fragile, like the remnants of a dream slipping away. "But it's not just about the money, it's the principle," he pressed, emotion layered in each word. I could sense the anger rising, and a part of me wanted to retreat, but I owed it to both of us to engage. "Jamie, it's not that I don't care or value you. I'm trying to navigate my own life too. What if I'm struggling in my own way, just like you?" The moment hung heavy, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in his armor begin to show. "I didn't realize you felt that way," he admitted, his voice low, the fight momentum suddenly dulled. I could see the realization wash over him, just as much as it flooded me. Perhaps I wasn't the only one struggling with insecurities masked as arrogance. In the days that followed, we both took a step back, breathing in the unease of our friendship and beginning to stitch it back together with more understanding. I did pay him back the $60. I realized that money was only one part of the equation. What mattered more was the open dialogue we finally had, the clarity that settled between us, allowing both our vulnerabilities to emerge. This experience transformed our friendship. It was no longer about the money but about feeling seen and valued. An update in my mind now gleefully whispered to me, I learned that competitions between friends can lead to both friction and an unexpected depth in connection. Looking back, that seemingly trivial debt acted like a guidepost, leading me to confront not just my financial responsibilities, but my emotional ones too. It became a lesson in empathy and respect, a reminder that true friendship treasures open-hearted conversations over mere transactions. And those rainy Thursdays? They aren't so dreary anymore, as they've become. Reminders of our renewed bond, strengthened through vulnerability, reminding me every day that sometimes, it's worth diving deeper to find the light. As I settled into my routine, the mundanity of each rainy Thursday transformed into a ritual of sorts. Each week, I would sit on my porch, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, as the rain drizzled on the roof above, creating a comforting soundtrack of muted rain patters and distant thunder rumbles. The street, with its slick, glistening pavement, took on a different hue. Each drop of water seemed to wash away not just the grime of the day but also the tension that had once hovered between James and me. I would think back to that moment when I looked him in the eyes and saw the hurt festering beneath the surface, beneath our laughter and easy banter, like an unresolved question lurking in the shadows. It was in this quiet space of reflection that I learned the importance of humility and accountability, both to myself and to those closest to me. I never forgot that debt, the $60 that, at one point, felt insurmountable, almost like a millstone around my neck. Yet that very symbol of conflict became a mirror, prompting a deeper inquiry into how I navigated my relationships. James and I began to spend more time together, engaging in long talks that seemed endless under the canopy of evening stars or the dim, warm glow of a dimmed living room. We would play board games, dive into old movies, and explore our small town's hidden gems, often with laughter trailing behind us like a kite on a gentle breeze. Those moments drew out a connection I hadn't known we'd lacked before. Conversations became more meaningful, filled with genuine inquiries into each other's lives, worries, and dreams. There was a palpable shift. The unspoken tension was replaced with a camaraderie built on shared experiences and vulnerability. No longer did I feel the burden of that $60. Instead, it served as the catalyst for deeper exchanges. One particularly rainy Thursday, as we sipped our drinks and watched the clouds roll in, I opened up. You know, I used to think friendship was just about hanging out and having fun, James. But I realize now it's about the tough stuff too, like debts and misunderstandings. I really appreciate how we've navigated through all of that. It brought us closer. He nodded, looking pensive, and then he smiled softly. I have to admit, I felt awkward about it, too. It wasn't just the money, it was what it represented. I don't want to feel like I'm holding something over you when all I really want is your company. The honesty hung in the air, wrapping around us like the comforting embrace of the warm sweaters we wore. I chuckled at the absurdity of how a financial transaction had morphed into a vehicle for deeper understanding. James reached for his phone, and with a twinkle in his eye, he pulled up a meme that perfectly encapsulated our journey, and we erupted into laughter, once again transported to a place where our bond felt effortless. That evening, the rain intensified, pounding against windows like a drum, but instead of keeping us boxed in, it felt liberating, an orchestra accompanying our newfound harmony. As the weeks turned into months, I cherished those Thursdays, never missing a chance to reconnect and nurture our friendship. I even made a mental note to repay the $60, but truthfully, it mattered less and less with each passing conversation. The emphasis shifted from debt to conversation, from obligation to connection. In a way, our playful banter transformed into discussions that danced around deeper themes, life, love, aspirations, and I began to realize that money and obligations are mere facets of a much larger picture. One evening, James surprised me with an early birthday celebration, a small gathering with close friends. As we settled in with laughter and stories, I felt a sense of belonging wash over me, filling the gaps that I'd sometimes not even noticed existed. In that warm glow, I leaned over and whispered to James, "Hey, I owe you something." He looked at me quizzically, his eyebrow raised, and I continued, this deep sense of gratitude for helping me see what truly matters. He just chuckled and nudged me playfully, a silent acknowledgement of our journey together. Though the rainy Thursdays still came, they carried a different energy now. They were soaked in laughter, born of warmth, and threaded with the beautiful realization that sometimes a rough patch can lead to a tapestry of richer connections. And though I never explicitly paid him back that $60, what emerged was far more valuable, an understanding that true friendship transcends financial debts, weaving an everlasting bond that brightens even the darkest of days. Perhaps, in its own way, That really was a payment worth cherishing. In the weeks that followed, I found myself smiling each time I heard the gentle patter of rain against my window. What used to feel monotonous now evoked an aurora of warmth in my heart. Those rainy Thursdays transformed into a cherished routine. I could almost hear the rain whispering secrets of camaraderie while I shuffled into my living room, bundled in a cozy blanket, a steaming mug of tea cradled in my hands. My phone buzzed to life, and a familiar name lit up the screen, Lucas. We had developed our own rhythm, a dance of banter and understanding that flowed easily, aided by shared memories and laughter. "Hey, you ready for our rain date?" The text read. Smiling to myself, I replied with a quick always. As I threw on my favorite hoodie, ready to dive into yet another cozy chapter of our friendship. Lucas arrived shortly after, a playful grin plastered across his face. "I brought snacks," he announced, producing a crinkly bag of popcorn and some gummy bears as if they were the treasures of a long-lost expedition. Settled on my couch, we slipped into our ritual, Netflix binging through the dreariest of mean days, outlining an adventure. Dipping into the surreal and the comedic, tracing myriad twists across genres, just like our conversations. And as the rain continued its serenade outside, something curious happened. Each time we laughed, each time we shared a meaningful look or a story from our past, I often found myself reflecting on the emotional balance we'd struck, threading through memories that we hadn't quite explored before. "I was thinking about that one time you tried to teach me how to cook," Lucas teased, nudging my shoulder. "You nearly burnt the house down." We both erupted in laughter, the shared embarrassment that once lurked in the corners now an emblem of progress, of understanding we had built upon one another's vulnerabilities. "Hey, don't forget I saved our lives from those flaming pancakes," I countered, recalling the chaos with a smirk. He shot back an exaggerated gasp, mock horror in his eyes. "I wouldn't call them pancakes. They were more like edible hockey pucks," I laughed harder, each taunt adding another layer to the fabric of our friendship. But nestled amid all the joy was something heavier, lurking just beneath the surface, a quiet contemplation about the essence of our exchanges. I had been hesitant to confront the emotional complexities that lay intertwined with our shared experiences. It was Lucas who finally led me there, unknowingly yet gently. With the popcorn bowl long emptied and the final credits rolling on yet another movie, I found myself breaking the easy banter, wanting to lay bare a thought that had occupied my mind. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about that $60, I said, sifting through my memories. "It's strange, but I feel like it became this little anchor for me, a symbol of how we needed that moment back then." Lucas turned to me, and his gaze grew serious. "You really don't need to feel guilty about that. I mean, we've moved past it, haven't we?" His voice was gentle, yet firm, a guiding light through the murkier waters. "But I appreciate that you're thinking of it differently now." The honesty in his tone ignited a flicker of warmth inside me. It showed me how fragile friendships can feel, how they can be caught up in miscommunications or assumptions. But it also reminded me of how imperative it is to find that empathy, to seek understanding instead of cementing a line between us. We lingered in that silence, where nothing needed to be filled with words as the calming sound of raindrops on the window enveloped us. But as if carrying the weight of that moment, I reached for him, causing a spontaneous whirlwind of revelations to unspool between us. "Thank you for being patient with me through all that. What are friends for?" He shrugged, smiling softly, yet the sincerity rippled through his eyes, anchoring me in the moment. That revealed something profound within me. The comfort of connection we had both nurtured through our shared antics and deep conversations was everything I had truly needed, more than any monetary value ever could hold. I realized that it wasn't about erasing the debt, nor tying it neatly with a bow, but about celebrating the transformation it had invoked in us. And as we settled into a more comfortable silence, I felt a lightness wash over me, the previously heavy air of expectations gently dispersing into something far richer. Fast forward again to another rainy Thursday, it was becoming my favorite sanctuary each week. This time, I felt the soft tickle of excitement ripple through my veins as Lucas arrived with a new bottle of board games and tales ready to unfurl. We played, we teased, and we occasionally drifted into deeper conversations, additional layers of our lives revealed moment by moment. In the end, I didn't need to pay him back. Instead, the debt faded, replaced instead by a tapestry of trust woven through shared experiences, a deeper connection that shimmered more brightly than any money exchanged could manage. And through the seemingly mundane, fragile threads of rainy Thursdays, we built a bond that could weather any storm, eager and ready for whatever lay ahead. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, the kind of dilemma people share online with that dreaded "am I the asshole?" tag, but here I am, sitting at my kitchen table, staring down at an empty plate while my kids are out with their dad. It wasn't always like this. 4 years ago, when the divorce was fresh, I believed we would make co-parenting work seamlessly, share everything, communicate effectively. But reality is rarely so tidy. The kids are still adjusting, they're 10 and 8, and between soccer practice, school events, and their dad's weekend adventures, I'm always trying to figure out how best to keep their lives stable. Then came the incident last week when he decided to lay down some new rules. No more video games during the week, he told me, as if he was handing down a decree from on high. I watched my son, Jack, crush his disappointment, the seismic shift in his little body palpable, while Lily, sweet and earnest, tried to negotiate, her big eyes glimmering with hope. "But Dad, what about our homework breaks?" she whispered, as if reasoning with gravity. My ex simply shrugged, his way or the highway, and walked out, leaving me to deal with their fallout. My instinct was to comfort them, to explain that their dad just wanted to be responsible and that they would adjust, but part of me wondered if his expectations were fair. Later that week, I made the decision to send them to his place instead of confront him directly or enforce rules I didn't fully agree with. I figured, maybe he could lighten the burden, let him implement his own decisions without me acting as the buffer. But as soon as I drove away, a wave of guilt washed over me. Was I really giving my kids the best shot at a balanced upbringing, or was I dodging my responsibility as a parent? My phone dinged a few hours later with a text from their dad, laced with irritation. "Nice of you to send them over without discussing it first." I stared at the screen and felt a ball of anxiety tighten in my throat. Despite his tone, I had hoped he might realize that I wasn't there to undermine him but to let him take the lead, something I thought he'd appreciate. But instead, all I felt was the familiar pang of fear that I was failing. What if I was just being lazy, avoiding the hard conversations we needed to have about co-parenting? Later that night, while I tucked the kids into bed, I saw what I feared most, Jack's little face crumpled up, confused over why he had to choose between Dad's rules and fun. I tried my best to comfort him, but I could sense the distance growing between us, as if the uncertainty I felt was infecting him, too. "Why can't we just have fun and it be okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, and it broke something inside me. What was I teaching them? That it was acceptable to pass the buck? That parenting was something to avoid? A part of me wanted to fight back and explain how harsh it could feel sometimes, yet another part feared pushing my ex further away, resulting in even more tension between us. I ended up lying awake, the weight of my choices pressing against my chest, unable to shake off the feeling that I might just be setting them up for confusion rather than a permanent solution. Days later, I received a text from my ex. He suggested a family meeting over pizza, which felt like a small olive branch, but I held my breath. It was the same dilemma looming over our heads, but it felt different now, more like a negotiation of emotional stakes than a black and white situation. Could we really move toward understanding each other's perspectives? Or were we destined to trip through mutual resentment? I still don't know how the meeting will go or if I'm the one creating divisiveness, but sitting at my table, I know it's critical to address our doubts. In the end, co-parenting might just be life's grandest mess, and I have to find a way to embrace that chaos for my kids' sake, even if it means controlling my guilt in the process. I hope to approach this journey not as two frazzled parents pulling apart but as a team willing to push through the discomfort for the sake of those innocent little faces, learning together along the way. I take a deep breath, feeling the weight of my thoughts settle on my chest like a thick blanket. The kids are at school, it's just me and the ticking clock echoing in the kitchen, reminding me of the time slipping away before this meeting with Jake. We've had our share of heated discussions, arguments flaring up like fireworks, especially when it came to our different styles of parenting. I often find myself reminiscing about the early days, before everything unraveled and the smiles faded like summer sunsets. Back then, we were a cohesive unit, a duo navigating life together. Now, it feels like we're two ships passing in the night, armed with resentment and frustration instead of compassion. I'm expecting him to come in guns blazing, ready to discuss a recent weekend incident where, in his eyes, I overstepped by allowing our kids to skip their bedtime to watch a movie. He always believed in strict routines, while I thought there was beauty in spontaneity, that sometimes we needed to let go and allow for those unplanned moments that could light up our children's eyes in ways a schedule never could. As I pour myself a cup of coffee, I wonder if this is the day he'll finally understand that not every decision needs to be a binary choice, that maybe, just maybe, we can meet in the middle. The doorbell rings, and my heart races. It's showtime. I open the door, and Jake stands there, hands shoved deep in his pockets, a slight crease lining his brow, a clear sign that today won't be easy. "Hey," he says, his voice even, albeit laced with tension. I can tell we're both straddling a tightrope of unspoken words. "Hi," I reply, trying to inject some warmth into the air, but it feels like I'm pushing against a brick wall. We settle at the table, the same one where we once celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, now a battleground for our parental philosophies. "Let's just get this over with," he says, a hint of exhaustion in his already weary tone. I nod, swallowing my pride, yet desperate to convey that my intention is not to undermine him but to seek a solution that serves the kids instead. As we dive into the conversation, I explain my perspective, emphasizing that those moments of joy, like movie nights, are precious. But they need structure, Michelle, Jake counters, running a hand through his hair, a move I recognize as one of frustration. "I get that," I reply softly, "but we can blend both. They can experience the joy of spontaneity and still have a routine." The tension crackles between us, an undeniable force that seems to be lifting us farther apart rather than bringing us together. But as the conversation flows, I start to catch glimpses of understanding breaking through his resolve. "I just want what's best for them," he finally admits, his voice dropping to a softer tone, vulnerability creeping in. There's a flash of something in his eyes, a flicker of the man I once loved, now buried beneath layers of hurt and anger. I want to reach out and tell him that I want the same, that we're on the same team, even if the landscape of our relationship looks rocky. We don't solve all our problems in that moment, but we find a tentative agreement to communicate better and be more flexible with the kids' needs, interspersed with laughter as we reminisce about our adventures as parents, the things we learned along the way. It's not a perfect resolution, but there's a sense of clarity, a first step taken amidst the chaos. Days pass, and I notice not only the kids adapting but also the shift in our interactions, slowly morphing from tactical maneuvers in the chess game of co-parenting to more fluid collaboration, joint parenting strategies forming organically. There's still awkwardness, but each exchange feels like another layer peeling away. I find small delights in the way our conversations start to shift from contentious to constructive, almost playful. One afternoon, we're out for ice cream with the kids, and I catch Jake stealing glances at me, a smile breaking across his face as our daughter stumbles over a joke, her laughter ringing out like music. I can't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, we're onto something here. As I watch him lean down to share a secret with our son, a shadow of our shared past floats above us, and I grasp tightly onto that flicker of hope. And yes, it's messy, and sometimes I still doubt if I'm making the right choices, but I also see that both Jake and I are evolving, laying a foundation I never expected to build again. This journey is still evolving, and in embracing the chaos, we might just find a bit of harmony after all. As we pile back into the car, the kids chattering away, I know it's not about erasing the past, but about forging ahead together, and for their sake, I'm willing to keep trying. The car hums softly as I turn the key in the ignition, a familiar routine that now feels like a sweet promise rather than a burden. The kids' voices blend into a joyful symphony behind me, filled with anecdotes about school, art projects, and their latest obsessions with superheroes. Ruby, my youngest, is still that vibrant bundle of energy, her laughter bouncing off the window as she enthusiastically reenacts some cartoon character. Max, ever the quieter one, joins in with his own, quieter enthusiasm, spinning elaborate tales about the cosmic adventures he imagines. As I glance at their faces in the rearview mirror, I can't help but feel the warmth radiating from their innocence. This moment, their laughter, the chaos, even the perpetual mess of snack crumbs and toys, is what I clung to during the hollow moments post-divorce. Jake and I may have our differences, but what remains steadfast is our shared priority, these kids. My heart beats a little harder, knowing we're creating a shared narrative, writing our story word by word even amidst the noise. But then, the undercurrent of anxiety twists in my stomach again as I consider the upcoming family meeting, our first sit-down since our awkward attempts at blending our parenting styles. I had even suggested bringing in a mediator, believing that a neutral third party could help us navigate the rocky waters of our new reality without drowning in resentment. Honestly, I felt like a ship tossed in stormy seas, unsure of whether I'd find safe harbor or capsize under the weight of our past. "Mom, look at this." Ruby suddenly squeals, waving a crumpled piece of paper mid-performance. It's her drawing, a colorful explosion on the page that vaguely reminds me of a rainbow, yet definitely carries all the chaos I might feel inside. This is you and Daddy fighting the evil robots. I chuckle lightly, the image surreal yet kind, reminding me that somehow, even in our most contentious moments, those little faces still find a way to make sense of things. And do we win? I ask playfully, hoping to inspire a solution rather than digging deeper into the abyss of disagreements. Of course. You always win, Mom. She beams with confidence, solidifying the sense of heroism I sometimes feel falling flat in those tense moments with Jake. It's a fleeting reassurance, but it's enough to allow me some clarity. Maybe winning isn't even the point. The thought lingers, heavy but enlightening, as we pull into our driveway, with its friendly chaos of toys left behind from a previous playdate. As we step inside, I can almost see the ghosts of arguments past lingering in the air, yet there's also the comforting aroma of our evening routine, the smell of something simmering on the stove, the scattered shoes and backpacks as evidence of busyness. This is our refuge, a home built on love, tension, and the messiness of family life. After dinner, I caught Jake on a rare day when he'd swung by to help me set up for the meeting. I noticed the way he hesitated, taking everything in, as if he were expecting me to lay a landmine somewhere between us. Instead, with all the courage I could muster, I suggested we work on a joint agenda to present to the mediator. This felt like an attempt to heal wounds, to find some middle ground, a step into a shared realm rather than one wrought with individual agendas. So, what's important to you? He asked after a long, thoughtful pause. My heart raced, not from the administrative task at hand but from the raw vulnerability of really addressing what we both sought to accomplish. I could easily slide into bitterness, hash out the past mistakes and newfound tensions. Instead, I chose to share my fear of the kids feeling caught in our storm. I want them to feel safe, I admitted, my voice a whisper dipped in emotion. We were in this together now, and I realized how fundamental it was to set aside old grudges to collaborate toward ensuring they didn't feel like pawns in our unraveling. It felt liberating with just the energy in the room shifting, even if it was only a crack in the ice we both had skated on for too long. With the meeting looming, a flicker of hope ignites again. I can almost breathe in the possibility of redemption. That night, as I stumbled into the quiet of my bedroom, the laughter of the kids fading into soft echoes, I knew the path ahead would remain jagged. Yet, in the chaos and uncertainty of co-parenting, I could finally see we were capable of more than I believed. And perhaps, just perhaps, we would carve our own way, one shared drawing, one awkward discussion, one messy dinner at a time. Confession, I had a miscarriage, and my teenage brother is becoming a dad. It feels surreal to even write that, but I've spent days wrestling with these thoughts in my head since the news broke. I'm 25, married to Jason for a few years now, and I've always imagined the laughter of children filling our cozy little home. When I got pregnant last summer, it felt like the stars aligned perfectly. We decorated a nursery, picked out baby names, and chattered for hours about our future. But then, life threw a cruel twist my way. My heart shattered in that sterile hospital room when the doctor told me there was no heartbeat. Grief swallowed me whole, leaving a hollow ache that tainted everything. It's a pain I still can't quite articulate, but it morphed into a numbing shadow that followed me relentlessly. Lately, I've been coming to terms with that profound loss, a heavy burden dressed in silence, when without warning, the ground shifted beneath my feet again. That's when I learned that my little brother, Dylan, had been keeping a secret. 18 years old and just as naive as any teenager, he was going to be a dad. I remember the moment vividly, how the words slammed into me like a train. We were sitting at the kitchen table, a bowl of my failed attempts at cookies sitting between us, and he blurted it out in the most nonchalant manner, as if casually discussing the weather. "I'm going to be a father," he said, and just like that, lunch became something else entirely. I felt a wave of resentment crash against the pain of my miscarriage, an ugly jealousy creeping in unexpectedly. The very thought of a teenager having a child while my dreams had crumbled felt like a slap in the face. Couldn't he see the cruel irony of it all? But inside, I wrestled with wanting to be happy for him, wanting to support him the way I should, knowing he was scared and confused too. Trying to be the understanding sister, I fought through my own devastation, putting on a brave face while my insides twisted in turmoil. As days turned to weeks, I found myself lingering on thoughts of Dylan's future child, knowing that whenever I'm around, I'll inevitably be reminded of what I can't have. I began to study him closely, watching the boy I grew up with morphing into someone that seemed more like a man, navigating parenthood with an unsettling mix of naivety and optimism. He was excited, constantly dreaming up plans and soaking in parenting advice from online forums like some eager college student studying for finals. During quiet moments, I wrestled with guilt, How could I envy him when I knew all he was feeling was sheer joy? I was torn between pride and this gnawing grief. The emotional conflict left me feeling utterly isolated. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he turned to me and asked, "Are you okay? You seem distant." The sincerity in his voice almost broke me. It was a simple question, a probe into the emptiness I'd wrapped around myself, but his words hung in the air like an unwelcome reality. I realized then I needed to share my pain. I couldn't keep wallowing in sorrow while he brought new life into the world. So, I took a deep breath and opened up about my miscarriage, letting tears spill freely as I spoke of the heartbreak and emptiness that had settled in my heart. I explained how it felt like I was living in a world filled with what-ifs, and how Dylan's happiness felt like a constant reminder of my loss. He listened quietly, processing every word. The air was thick with understanding, and what surprised me was that I felt lighter afterwards. By sharing my grief, I allowed us both to find common ground, a sort of sibling connection that transcended our individual struggles. When the day finally came for him to become a father, I was there, standing in that hospital room filled with the scent of antiseptics and new life. Watching him hold his child for the first time ignited a bittersweet cocktail of emotions within me, joy mixed with sorrow, but I didn't shy away from it. Instead, I let the feelings wash over me, acknowledging my pain while celebrating his joy. I realized I could be happy for him while still grieving my loss. Those two feelings could coexist in a strange, beautiful contradiction. As I held that tiny, precious life in my arms, Dylan's son, I felt hope stir within me for the first time in months. Maybe, just maybe, this was a new beginning, a chance to carry on a different legacy of love, despite the wounds that life had dealt me. We sat in that hospital room for hours, sharing stories, laughter, and all the hopes we had for this child. At that moment, I knew that while life had taken so much away from me, it had gifted me with something else, a deeper love for my brother and an abiding hope for the future. Things will be different now. I may have moments of sadness, but they wouldn't drown me anymore. So maybe this is my confession. Loss can open a door to unexpected joy, and in embracing all parts of life, I finally found a way to heal. Update: it's been 6 months since Dylan's son was born, and honestly, it feels like a new chapter for us all. I've started volunteering at the local children's hospital, rediscovering the joy and laughter I thought I'd lost. Every time I see my brother with his son, I feel a bittersweet warmth fill my heart. I still have moments of sadness, but they're gradually shifting into something deeper, a commitment to support them both as they navigate this new adventure. Grief, I've learned, doesn't disappear. It whispers reminders of our past while urging us to fill our lives with love, creating legacies in unexpected ways. I'm grateful for the laughter, the late-night feedings I help with, and most importantly, the bond my brother and I have now forged through this journey together. Life continues to surprise me, and I'm learning to embrace it. As I sit in the living room, the soft glow of the evening light filtering through the sheer curtains, I can't help but reflect on how much has changed since that stormy day when I had my miscarriage. The sound of my brother's laughter, muffled from the kitchen where he's prepping a bottle, is like a balm to my heart, soothing the lingering aches. I had imagined this moment differently. I had dreamed of a family of my own, of swaddling my baby in cozy blankets and whispering sweet nothings while my brother looked on with a smile. Yet here he is, at 16, with a tiny human depending on him and, strangely enough, it feels right in an imperfect way. I thought I'd feel a twinge of jealousy each time I held his son, but instead, that same warmth envelops me again, a testament to the resilience of the heart. Every coo and gurgle from the crib ignites a sense of hope, a gentle push toward healing that I never anticipated. In these fragile moments, my brother and I have built an unspoken pact. We support each other through the sleepless nights, the endless diaper changes, and the moments of sweet tranquility spent just watching the baby drift into slumber. It's intoxicating, the way his face lights up when he talks to his son, his eyes softening as they connect through shared giggles and baby gurgles. It's a language of love that we've both learned to speak, translating our pain into something beautiful. That first time I held my niece, I felt like a part of something larger than my grief. I had been handed a new role, an opportunity to nurture not just this innocent life but also the shattered pieces of my own. Each day, as my brother and I sit together, we share stories from our childhoods, countless memories painted with laughter and mischief. His son, cradled in his arms, becomes the canvas upon which we weave our histories. Yet, there remains a delicate balance of sadness beneath the surface, intertwined with the joy. I find myself caught in a delicate dance, cherishing these moments while acknowledging the emptiness I still carry. I confide in my brother during our quieter evenings, sharing my fears about motherhood that will never come to fruition for me. "It's just not fair," I had said one night, the weight of my words hanging thick between us. But my brother looked at me, his expression solemn but understanding. "Life isn't fair. But we can choose what we make of it." He smiled, rubbing the back of his neck like he always does when he's deep in thought. It was a reminder that even amid sorrow, we could carve space for joy, both for ourselves and for each other. Over the weeks, I've started to register the changed dynamics within our family. Our parents, initially overwhelmed by the unexpected news of my brother's impending fatherhood, have softened into their roles of adoring grandparents, frequently stopping by with meals and advice dripping with their affection. I've found it fascinating how joy can spread like wildfire, consuming the remnants of grief and weaving it into new patterns of family bonds. Some days, I catch glimpses of our old lives, my brother and I teasing each other about our teenage antics, which ignited laughter among ourselves. I sometimes wonder if these moments are reminders of the innocence we are desperately trying to capture amid this upheaval. These nights, where we dim the lights, wrap ourselves in the warmth of blankets, and indulge in nostalgic stories of our childhood, have morphed into something truly special. As the days pass, I often find myself reveling in the simple joys, the soft touch of the baby's tiny hand around my finger, the way his wide eyes explore the world with curiosity, and the way my brother beams every time he sees his son accomplish even the smallest of feats, like a smile or a coo. I discover an unexpected sense of purpose. I pour my heart into being an awesome aunt, a role I never anticipated, but one that brings me a profound satisfaction I could not have imagined before. With every milestone, first steps, first words, I'm reminded that love transcends loss. It builds bridges where once there were only shadows. Eventually, we decide to celebrate the baby's first birthday, a monumental occasion that feels like a tribute to life itself. Our parents throw a small gathering, and we adorn the backyard with colorful decorations and streamers that dance lazily in the summer breeze, while laughter intertwines with the buzzing of bees. As I observe my brother, who is now a doting father, I feel a swell of pride and gratitude wash over me. His joy is infectious, and for the first time in a long while, the ache of my loss doesn't feel as suffocating. Instead, it becomes a silent reminder of what once was, urging me to embrace the present, shifting the narrative from what I couldn't have to what is here, vibrant and alive. As I blow out the candles on the cake, I see the smiles and laughter around me, and my heart whispers a sweet promise to carry this love forward, blending our pasts with the future we never anticipated. It's still a journey, one filled with complexities and emotions that ebb and flow. I don't know what tomorrow holds or what other surprises life has hidden around the corner. But for now, I am here, tangled with my brother and his son in this wonderful web of life, feeling grateful for the laughter amidst the tears and finding healing in every moment shared. As the last remnants of laughter echoed around the room, I felt a gentle swell of peace settle over me, an elusive sensation that had often slipped through my fingers. My brother, still wide-eyed and youthful yet suddenly transformed in the way only parenthood can do to someone, cradled his son, a small bundle of innocence wrapped in soft fabric. Watching him was like peering into a mirror reflecting both the familiar and the unfamiliar. There was a hint of wonder in his eyes, a spark that whispered of responsibilities yet to be mastered and joys yet to be discovered. I could barely keep the smile off my face as he attempted to balance the baby with one arm while reaching for a slice of cake with the other, a comically heroic display. The noise slowly dissipated until only the quiet hum of the fluorescent kitchen lights remained, the joyous aftermath of birthday celebrations lingering like a soothing balm. I wandered outside, where the night wrapped around me, cool but comforting, a striking contrast to the warmth and chaos inside. I leaned against the wooden railing of our porch and surveyed the star-speckled sky, each shimmering point a silent witness to my journey, to all the heartache that had led to this moment. Grief, once a heavy cloak draped over my shoulders, had transformed into something lighter, a reminder woven into the fabric of my being, urging me to cherish every fleeting second. It was a surprising revelation, really, how the threads of joy and sorrow could so intricately intertwine, creating a tapestry rich with meaning. I thought about the birthday cake and how it represented not only my brother's new beginning but also my desire to celebrate life in all its forms. At that moment, I began to see my brother's son not just as the product of a young, unintended association but as a beacon of hope, a fresh start we all needed, a tiny but potent reminder that life goes on, filled with possibilities. When the kitchen door creaked open, I turned to find my brother stepping outside, wiping frosting from his fingers with an exaggerated roll of his eyes, an expression that perfectly encapsulated the delightful mayhem of parenthood. He slipped beside me, looking up at the stars, and we shared a comfortable silence, a moment devoid of expectation yet brimming with understanding. "You know," he finally said, his voice barely louder than a whisper, "I really didn't expect life to shift like this. To be honest, I was terrified when I found out." I nodded, feeling the familiar threads of his uncertainty tug at my heart. "Yeah, I guess we both were." An ambient stillness enveloped us, and I could sense the weight of unspoken truths perched just beyond the veil of our vulnerability. "But it feels right now," he added, a cautious optimism shining through. "Like I'm meant to be here, doing this." We spoke softly, words of encouragement and reflection spilling out, creating bridges over our shared experience of grief and hope. It was a fleeting exchange that felt ceremonious in its own right, a pact of solidarity amidst the uncertainties of parenthood and the shadows of our past. We stood there, two siblings tethered by obligation and love, newfound allies in this uncharted territory, determined to navigate the unexpected turns together. As the night darkened further, and the stars twinkled with a knowing glimmer, something inside me unfurled. I realized this story wasn't solely about my brother or even the circumstances that brought his son into the world. It was also about the capacity we have to love fiercely, to grow through adversity, and to embrace the mosaic of memories that life unfurled before us. Mixing the bittersweet with the beautiful. There was still uncertainty ahead, of course, parenthood is daunting, and my brother would stumble along the way, just as I would wrestle with my memories. But there was also strength in the narrative we were crafting, woven with resilience and laughter, intertwining our lives like the constellations above us. The night lingered on, filled with whispers of togetherness and the promise of tomorrow, giving me hope that while the road before us might be winding, we wouldn't journey alone. In this moment, encircled by family and love, I finally found rest in the understanding that healing is never linear, it spirals, it twists, yet ultimately leads us back to one another, eternally connected through the shared gift of life itself. Confession, I paid my way through college coursework, and now I'm going to graduate with a degree that I did not earn, but rather bought piece by piece. I know how it sounds, flippant, irresponsible, but let me explain before you judge. It all began in my sophomore year when the pressure of maintaining my scholarships while balancing a part-time job became almost unbearable. I was overwhelmed, drowning in courses that felt designed to torment rather than educate. My friends were either excelling effortlessly or struggling gloriously, and I found myself in a dark space of melancholy detachment. One evening, after a particularly intense round of studying that included multiple energy drinks and little sleep, I stumbled upon an online community that offered a service, purchasing coursework and final exams outright. The first transaction felt like a slippery slope, the kind that promises a temporary fix for long-term consequences. Justifying that act of desperation became easy. After all, wouldn't I be earning the degree by paying towards my future? I convinced myself that everyone was cheating in one form or another. They just didn't have the boldness to embrace it quite like I did. As each semester passed, I found myself sinking deeper into a quicksand of deception, carefully crafting excuses for my absence from study sessions and over-exaggerating my partial understanding of the subjects. My friends often praised me for my dedicated work ethic, and although their words would sting momentarily with guilt, I brushed them aside, whispering to myself that I was only finding a shortcut to a frustrating destination. But there lay the essence of my conflict. There were moments, late at night, when the weight of my choices pressed down like a seal, prompting haunting questions. Was I a fraud? Would I deserve to step on the stage come graduation? I could already hear my family cheering, my mother's proud smile lighting up the auditorium, unaware of the disingenuous piece of paper I was holding onto so tightly. Everything kept shifting and fracturing within me like glass breaking silently in a forgotten corner, beautiful yet destructive. As graduation approached, the ache of my concealment gnawed beneath my skin. I was a ticking time bomb, a secret kept far too long, and it felt like the walls were closing in, threatening to expose me at any moment. Then, one day while lurching through the cafeteria, a friend pulled me aside. She had suspected something was amiss, and the look on her face struck a match to my carefully constructed facade. Confessing to her felt like actually letting the air out of a balloon. Her response was one I hadn't anticipated. Rather than anger, she offered empathy, admitting that the academic landscape often forced students into corners they had to navigate through dodgy strategies like mine. That moment shifted everything for me. It wasn't about whether what I had done was right or wrong, but rather about understanding the depth of the pressure we all faced. As graduation day arrived, I stood among my fellow students, donning my cap and gown, feeling simultaneously high on adrenaline and low with self-doubt. And when my name was called, I felt something shatter in me, the part that thought I could outsmart the world. I walked across that stage, a degree in hand, yes, one bought with a hefty price tag rather than blood, sweat, and tears. The applause echoed around me like distant thunder, and in that moment, I realized I had betrayed my journey, but as I met my family's expectations, the simple joy of their pride began to override the complexity of my feelings. Afterward, I stepped outside, almost dazed by the weightiness of it all, when a thought flared to life in my mind. This was just the beginning. I knew I couldn't keep running from the truth forever. It was time for some honesty. Perhaps I would share my clandestine story in a more private setting, with those who really mattered, and in that telling, I would find healing. I couldn't change the past, but I could redefine my future. Maybe my experience would even serve as a lesson on authenticity, connection, and the very real pressures of society. Update: several months later, I did reach out to my friend who had supported me back at graduation, along with a few close acquaintances. Over coffee, I laid everything bare, and to my surprise, they responded not with judgment but rather with understanding. It sparked conversations about our experiences and the struggles many face in our generation regarding societal expectations and the pressure to succeed at any cost. Writing this out, sharing my truth, it felt liberating, and together we began to create a group focusing on academic honesty and support, helping others navigate their own paths with integrity. Now, as I look toward the future, I hold my degree not just as a symbol of achievement, but as a reminder that it's not always the path we take that defines us, but the honesty we must eventually embrace along the way. I can still visualize that summer afternoon when my friends and I held our first meeting. Inside the small campus coffee shop, sunlight poured in through the big windows, illuminating our makeshift meeting space, which consisted of mismatched chairs and tables pushed together. The aroma of roasted beans filled the air, creating a sense of warmth, much like the conversations we began to share. In one corner, I could see Sarah, nervously twirling her hair, finally breaking her silence to share her own struggles, how she felt the weight of her family's expectations resting heavily on her shoulders. It was a familiar feeling. I had been there, too, buried under pressure and guilt, trying to juggle classes, a part-time job, and an insatiable desire to please everyone around me. Our little group blossomed into a safe haven, where confessions were freely exchanged like whispers of wind passing through the trees. Before long, we were venturing beyond just our academic honesty initiative. We organized events that fostered a sense of community, bringing together individuals who felt overwhelmed and out of place in the finicky world of higher education. We laughed more than I ever thought possible, exchanging stories of late-night study sessions fueled by caffeine and the ridiculousness of your classic imposter syndrome. There was something profound about vulnerability. When you openly admit your flaws and fears to others, it transforms those burdens into shared experiences, which somehow lightens the load. I started attending workshops on ethics and academic integrity, learning more about the real impact of decisions I used to brush aside. There was a powerful moment during one of those discussions when I finally understood the gravity of my actions. I stood there, listening to another student practically in tears, talking about how he felt he was not worthy of being in college because he struggled to keep up, how he had resorted to cheating just to stay afloat. I felt guilty, a wave of remorse washing over me, and I wondered how many people like him had slipped through the cracks, feeling alone in their academic journey. It prompted me to speak openly about my own choices, to share the truth that had slowly unraveled my conscience. As I spoke, I saw the surprise mingled with relief in the eyes of those around me. It was as if I had peeled back the layers of shame that had wrapped tightly around us all. This cathartic release sparked discussions about what it truly means to earn your education and how, at the heart of it, is the understanding that everyone is fighting their own battles in silence. The irony was not lost on me. While I had paid my way through college, the real education came from facing my fears and flaws head-on. As the semester drew to a close, I prepared for graduation, standing in front of the mirror, my cap and gown draping elegantly over the shoulders of someone who had finally found a measure of peace. My heart, once heavy with deceit, was now lightened by compassion and understanding, not just for myself, but for the countless faces I had come to know and love through our group. As I received my diploma, I didn't just see the degree. Instead, I perceived it as a token of survival, a reminder of how far I've come. In that moment, it was evident that integrity mattered far more than mere achievements on paper. I left the auditorium, my heart buoyant, my soul ready to forge a new path, one constructed on the foundation of honesty and camaraderie. I was stepping into the world, prepared not just to be a graduate but to advocate for others, to encourage them that honesty isn't just a buzzword but a guiding principle. And under the stars that night, sharing laughter with friends who had become family, I felt a profound sense of belonging, a richness of experience that far surpassed any degree. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I embraced the knowledge that while I may have struggled, I was now equipped with the tools to help others navigate their own intricate labyrinths. Reflecting back, I realized that my so-called failure became my greatest privilege, an opportunity to redefine success on my own terms and perhaps sow the seeds of authenticity in the lives of others around me. With that warm feeling of belonging wrapping around me like a blanket, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I've come. The journey from a hollow accomplishment to a deeply personal understanding of integrity had changed the contours of my life in ways I had never anticipated. As the conversation turned to lighter topics and our laughter echoed into the night, I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. This was more than just a graduation party, it was a celebration of truth and acceptance. There's something about being on the brink of a new chapter that fills you with excitement, yet also with a slight twinge of anxiety. Yes, I was graduating, but this meant stepping into a world outside the university's protective walls, where the complexities of adulthood would lay themselves bare. That summer, my friends and I busied ourselves with dreams and practicalities, each of us contemplating what lay ahead. I found solace in writing, each word pouring onto the page as a cathartic release. I chronicled my experiences, not just out of a desire to express myself, but with the hope of crafting a guide that could resonate with others who faced similar dilemmas, the pressure to succeed, the fears of inadequacy, and the daunting shadows of society's expectations. I spent evenings sipping coffee in cozy cafes, hazy lamplight illuminating the pages of my journal as I poured my thoughts onto paper, detailing not just my journey but also the voices of fellow students I had spoken with about their own struggles. In doing so, I connected with those who had grappled with cheating, anxiety, or the fear of disappointing their families. It was through these candid stories that I started to see a pattern. Many of us felt lost in a sea of comparison, our worth often tethered to numerical grades and hollow accolades. I realized that my own story had the potential to shed light on the darker corners of academic life that weren't often highlighted. Instead of seeking validation through a conventional path, I began to embrace the idea that each one of us has our own unique narrative that adds depth to the collective experience. As the season turned, and graduation approached, I stood at the threshold of not just a ceremony but a pivotal moment of self-discovery. With my friends rallying around me, we decided to establish a real space on campus for honest dialogue, an initiative to create a safe haven for students struggling with the weight of unreal expectations. We entitled it Unwritten Paths, a name that encapsulated the myriad ways we could navigate life with integrity, well-being, and authenticity. Each week, students would gather to share their stories, brainstorm ideas, and offer support, knowing that they were part of a community that championed personal truths over societal pressures. Finally, graduation day arrived, a technicolor whirlwind of pride, nerves, and overwhelming emotion. Standing in line, clad in my cap and gown, I felt every heartbeat echoing my anticipation. When they called my name, I stepped forward, my friends cheering wildly from the sidelines. As I held the diploma in my hands, I wasn't just thinking about the hours of study, the sleepless nights, or the money spent. Instead, I felt an overwhelming gratitude for the lessons learned along the way. Those lessons had come not just from textbooks and lectures but from grappling with my sincerity and, in turn, learning to embrace the authenticity of others. As I scanned the crowd, I found my closest friends, people who understood me, who celebrated me not for my grades, but for my journey, and my heart swelled with joy. We gathered later, recounting the day's events, our laughter bright against the evening sky. In that moment, I recognized something profound. While the future felt as uncharted as a blank page, I was ready to tackle it with an open heart, armed with empathy and resilience. And then, as if life had its own script, I received a message from my old college professor, the one who had challenged me to think beyond the traditional definitions of success. He invited me to share my journey and the impact of our community initiative at an upcoming panel on academic integrity. Nervously, I accepted. It felt surreal to think that my story could inspire a broader conversation. As I prepared to step into a space surrounded by academics and thought leaders, I took a moment to breathe and center myself, reflecting on the days of fear and self-doubt, knowing full well that I was embarking on yet another chapter, one where I could truly weave my experiences into a narrative that might change someone's life for the better. In sharing my voice, in being open about my flaws and triumphs, I was no longer just someone who paid her way through college. I was a living testament to the power of transformation, honesty, and compassion. With every word I spoke, I hope to inspire others not to hide behind their carefully constructed facades but to embrace their journeys, however messy or unconventional they might be. As I continued to navigate my path in this dynamic world, I realized that the degree I hadn't truly earned was merely a stepping stone towards something far more significant, a shared vision for a future where integrity and authenticity reign supreme.